Welcome. Good morning, part 2, episode 2 of the epoxy tumblers. I'm just trying to set this up to make sure it does not fall. Okay, then I'm going to open up my computer just in case I don't miss any type of questions while we're doing the live. Whoa, this thing keeps falling on me. All right, here we go. Okay, so we already did part 1 of the epoxy tumbler, which I'll show you that right here. It has already been gluing or drying since yesterday. We painted it and then just did one layer of fine glitter. I like it. I wanted to do this big chunky glitter, but we're just gonna go with only one this time. Okay, then also the other thing I did too yesterday was finish assembling this because I did not do it correct yesterday, or I didn't do it. Anyway, it is all assembled. This thing right here I got off Amazon for like 14 bucks. It was super cheap. I got it used. It was one of those like new used things, and it came in its original packaging. The packaging was really messed up, so maybe that's the reason why they said it was new, but I'm pretty sure it was not used. All right, so I'm just gonna put that like that. Got this all set up. I'm gonna plug this in, and then this little tumbler has like a tumbler thing, has this right here. You can turn it off, you can turn it on. So I'm gonna flip it off. And then it also came with, which is really cool, it came with like these foam circle things, which is what I have in here. I already have it already in there. And this was what was drying. I used a random jar with like rice for my party props that I used to dry this. But now that it's all dry, maybe I can handle it. You know, do people shake this off? I don't know. Because like there is still a ton of glitter that's on here, like loose glitter. I'm gonna get a piece of parchment paper and just kind of shake this off a little bit. Give it like a good shake. It's like you hit it and it just showers. Okay, good enough. Can I touch it? All right, there we go. So here is that. I'm switching this around because I realized that this little hole is supposed to be on the outside. Shove that in here. Because then, what am I doing? It's like I'm trying to think too hard for this. Okay, so now there's like a hole. The reason why you want that hole on the outside is there's like a dowel right here. You want to set that thing right in there. And then to make sure that this stick doesn't come off, there is like a hole at the very end. And then you unscrew this like screw. There we go. Okay, this is like a second stick, so you could be working on 2 cups at the same time. So then all you would do is take this, slide this in that little hole. The bottom of that hole goes onto this dowel. And then right here on this dowel, there is another hole. I keep saying the word hole, I'm sure it's obnoxious. And you just want to find that, where is it? Oy. Where are you? There it is. Okay, find it in there, and then we'll try, and then all we're gonna do is just take this little nut thing that's at the very end, and you're just gonna tighten it, just a hand tight. That's so it won't rotate off your thing. Wouldn't that suck? If you like came back and your tumbler was like all off, just rotated right off. Okay, I'm just gonna throw away this glitter. All right, I know some people use like silicone mats to epoxy their tumblers, but I don't have a silicone mat, so I'm gonna be using just some parchment paper and make sure it's flat so it doesn't hit my tumbler as it's rolling. This should be good, just like that. What do we think? Yep, like that. Okay, so then before we go into turning this on, sorry my nose itches. The tumbler turner itself came with these like hard plastic cups. I'm not going to use these because I feel like these are like a one-time use, and I don't like one-time use things. Like I like to be able to continue using things. So I bought these silicone cups, and it came with like a bunch of different sizes. There's like small itty bitty little ones, and then there's like a lot bigger ones. I don't know. There's just a whole bunch of it, little pipets, and then these like silicone popsicle sticks that I love. So I'm going to use that instead, because once it hardens, then I can just take the dried epoxy out of it, and then I can continue to use these things. I really like items that it's not a one-time use. Disposable, I don't like that. Now, one thing I did forget to buy, which I'm glad it came into the tumbler turner. It also came with popsicle sticks, but I'm not going to use those either. But are disposable gloves. Now, I'm sure in the perfect world, they should probably make silicone like gloves that will just, I don't know. Do they make those? I have no idea. But I forgot to buy them or even research. The tumbler turner came with them, so you are going to for sure want to use that. Now, going on to epoxies. This is the epoxy that I'm going to be using. It is, you can see, hi, look at my face. I have no masks on. I'm not going to be using a mask. If you are using any other epoxy out there, you have to be using proper PPE. It is very toxic to you, give you cancer and all that stuff. I've done a couple videos about this, but I will give it a little shout out here again today. If you are using any other epoxy, I'm telling you there is cancer stuff in there. It'll kill your lungs, birth defects. The list goes on and on. This stuff right here has none of that. There's no cancer warnings or anything like that on the labels. Is because there's nothing on here, this or in here in this product that will give you any type of cancer, reproductive issues, lung issues, anything like that. However, it does have some type of like, the stuff that's made there can cause skin allergies or irritants, which is why we're going to be using plastic gloves, because the last thing you want is a skin allergy. The other cool thing about this too, I got like a random piece of glitter on the inside of this thing. The other cool thing about this too is because there's lacking all of those chemicals and stuff, there's zero smell to this, so you're not going to get a headache. Now, y'all, if you are getting a headache from your epoxy, it's not good. The headache is like number one sign of there's something in there that you shouldn't be using. And Christy Montgomery, we need a UK supplier. Super tight. This company right here does supply to the UK. I've heard that the shipping might be a little bit too much, but and I'm gonna talk to Brian, the owner of Super Tight, to see if that's something that he can work on. But they do ship to the UK. I'm pretty sure they ship worldwide. Okay, so this epoxy right here is a 1-to-1. So you only need the same thing, 1-to-1. So on here, I'm gonna put like a half a half an ounce in the inside, and there's like lines on the cup. It'll probably be really hard to see, but there's like lines on this cup. And I'm just going to line it up to a half an ounce. The cool thing about this is you don't have to be like a scientist or anything like that. So if you go over or under just a little bit, it's not going to mess up the epoxy, because he designed it to where we don't have to be scientists. We can just eyeball it. The other thing too, as I've been asked, is this UV resistant? Is this epoxy UV resistant? So hold on, let me finish squeezing. Ugh. Let's get all the way to the one. Okay, there we go. The other thing with this too is the purple that's in part A. This purple is that UV resistant stuff. So when you put this together and it dries and cures, it's going to be crystal clear, but this purple that's in here is that UV resistant stuff. So it is UV resistant after it's cured. We're going to stir this up just a little bit. Stirring this activates the hardening. That's why the epoxies are always in two separate bottles, because once you put them together, it starts that curing process. I'm just going to give it a really good stir. And as I stir it, I'm getting glitter flakes in places. Shipping is $50 for just the epoxy. Christy, I will try and ask Brian, the owner of Super Tight, if there's anything that he can do. I do know when I talked to him before that about shipping, he doesn't charge, like it's an accurate shipping cost. He's not overcharging for shipping, or at least that's what he told me. The unfortunate part about it is it's so expensive to ship overseas when you're US based. However, he does have a place, like a warehouse in Spain, so maybe it can get cheaper if he starts selling it over in Spain. Okay, I just flipped the tumbler turner on. You can see it spinning. Ooh, look at that. All right, I probably used way too much epoxy, but we'll see. I had to quit talking because now I'm focusing. I want to make sure I get this good and coated on there. I feel like I'm like chasing a rabbit right now. There's like one spot on this tumbler that does not have any epoxy. It's right here. Like, wait, come back. And as I'm doing this, and like in certain areas, whoa, my face itches, and now I have a plastic glove on that has epoxy on it. How do you itch your face? Okay. So as it's doing this, I probably should have done another layer of glue or paint and glitter, because as I'm rubbing this, like the paint's coming, or the glitter's coming off of the paint. It's not bad. It's not terrible. I think once I'm done with it, it'll all look good, but you can tell in certain areas where maybe the paint had dried already and it didn't take. And I think I totally took too much epoxy. I have like a decent amount left in this thing. Brian always says, the guy that owns this company, he always says, people use way too much epoxy. You shouldn't be needing to use that much epoxy. So maybe he's looking at this going, I'm using the right amount or the least amount. I don't know. Okay, just rubbed it there, and I'm just going to throw the rest of it on here. I don't have another use for this, so I'm just going to put the rest of it on here. This looks good. Yay or nay? Do you agree? I think this looks really good. For being my very first tumbler, heck yes. Look at that. Does he plan on selling them in bigger sizes? I don't know. I should ask him. Maybe that's something else that I will ask. When the live is done, if you want to leave that question, because it's going to be saved into my feed, and then I'll ask him and then respond back, because that is a good question. All right. Okay, so this stuff takes 1 to 2 hours to cure. So I'm going to leave it on. This is like beautiful. And look how much I have still. And I really don't want to put any more on. There is a ton on this thing. I feel it. Maybe it has like a smell to it, but not like a chemical smell. Like it smells like bubble gum or like grape or something. I don't know. Okay, because some people buy this stuff by the gallon. So when I went to Dallas to do the Tumbler Con with Brian, all the other epoxy companies were there, and they were also demoing like their epoxy, and he said that you actually shouldn't be using that much epoxy. Like, even if you're going to be using other brands' epoxies, there's still way too much epoxy on there. That smaller or like more layers but thinner coats is what he said, because he thinks that if you were to just do like one small coat and then come back and then do another, it extends the processing time, and the make time for it, but he still thinks that that's way too much. So that was the other thing that I had asked him. I was like, everyone's bottles are so big. Why are yours so small? And he said, because you really don't need to be using that much epoxy. So even if you were going to stick to any other epoxy, doing thinner coats, but possibly more of them, you would end up using less epoxy. And I know I've seen people that have used epoxy, and all of a sudden they're dumping it, and there's like a whole bunch that's coming down on your parchment paper. That's probably way too much epoxy, because now you're wasting it all. I have like a few drops here and there, and I think that's probably just because I was messily pouring this, but like I still have a ton left in here. Not a ton, probably about, I said a ton and then I changed my mind. There's probably, there's a decent amount in there. What am I gonna do with that? Not put it on here, right? I don't know, but for my very first tumbler, I think this thing looks so stinking good. Oh yeah, I've seen that too. I'm too cheap for that. And that's the other thing too. I hate being wasteful. If this right here is going to bug me. I'm wasting this. What am I going to do with this? I have nowhere to put it. And if I put it back on here, then I don't need it. The struggle. You know what I should have done is cut some acrylic cake toppers that I have that I need to glue, and then use the leftover of this to glue all of those acrylics that I needed to, but too late now. Don't really have an option. And it's on my hands or on my gloves. Let's see here. It would be nice to know, in reality, how much is it that you don't really need. I'm gonna scrape it off my gloves. Y'all, I like being wasteful is one of those things for me that I just can't be wasteful. There's not a bone in my body that is wasteful. And then you can see in the tumbler yesterday when I tried to do like the bigger flakes, they're in there. There's a couple of them because I shook it on there and then some of them stayed. But like, I am thoroughly satisfied with this thing. Okay, so I'm gonna put some at the top because I think I missed the very top of. Yeah, the very top of this I definitely missed. I missed with paint, I missed with glitter, I missed with epoxy. There we go. All right, looking good. Do I not have any bubbles at the top? No. No bubbles. If you see like that right there is not, if that's what you're talking about or referencing, that is the paint I had painted on and then obviously didn't get the glitter to it. This mug or this tumbler was originally black. And then I did purple paint to it and then put purple glitter. So that purple that you're seeing, that light purple, is actually just paint. There's no bubbles. I don't see any bubbles. I'm like impressed. This looks good. But now I just have to wait like 2 hours for it to dry. So next step on this journey of epoxy tumbler is wait for it to dry. And my glasses keep falling off. But wait for it to dry. And then after, when it's dry, I have to sand it and then put on one final coat. Right? I think that's what it is. You sand it to make it smooth and then put on a final coat. Or if you didn't do that thick of coat, you would have to put on a second coat, let that dry, sand, and then do a third coat. I'm pretty sure that's how this jazz goes. Usually when you are mixing it, it creates micro bubbles in the epoxy and you have to take a heat gun to it to pop them. So I do know what you're saying, but I don't see any bubbles. I don't see any bubbles in this. I have seen people that do use heat guns on their epoxy tumblers. But like I said, I'm not seeing any. There's like a spot right here on the lip that I missed as I'm sitting here staring at it. Right here. There we go. Okay, and then I'm just going to continue looking because you do make a good point. I have seen people use heat guns, but like I seriously don't see any bubbles in this. Weird. But it definitely had bubbles. Like you can see inside of this this thing, like there's bubbles in it. Excuse me, but I don't know. I'm not seeing any bubbles in here. Since it isn't toxic, do you not have to wear a mask when sanding it down? Sorry for so many questions. No, more questions, the better. Let me ask Brian. When I was talking to him about epoxy tumblers and like how to make them, and he doesn't know, he's not a crafter. He's just a person that makes glue. I was telling him the process, and he never once told me that I needed to wear a mask. But since that will be for like episode 3, then I'll be able to update you on what that entails, like if we have to wear a mask or not. But I'm assuming no, but I don't want to like say that as fact because I don't know. But I will get back to you. That will be for sure. That was like a great question. Good question. Because like really, I am not a tumbler maker by any means. And I was just talking to my husband about this. The whole purpose and reason why I'm making this tumbler is, and I'll probably continue making tumblers, is just for educational purposes. For anyone that is starting out in epoxy or just is like an expert but looking for a different, more safer type of epoxy. So really, the only reason why I'm doing this is just for education purposes. So if you have questions, let me answer them for you, or at least I can ask somebody that is an expert in glue, like the questions that you have, so we can get better answers. The bottom of this I can tell is really rough. Maybe in certain areas it's a little bit thinner. Just gonna spill some on that. And then I think I'm almost out of epoxy. So this stuff, how long have we been on this live? For about 30 minutes now. And this epoxy, after it sits for a little while, it's 1 to 2 hours of cure time. But like before, when I first mixed this up, it was like super runny. And now I'm trying to show you that it's like almost like jelly. It like gels up. So I've done a rhinestone tumbler before and using the epoxy, and I preferred to let that sit. So I was using the epoxy, I would mix it up, I would let it sit for about 30, 45 minutes, and then I would go back in and then use the epoxy to bling my tumbler. So you definitely can, do this in stages. Alrighty. So now that I like scraped off the rest of it and just put it on the tumbler, and I can see from the side, like looking at it from the side going up, that it's definitely not like a perfect, like there's rippling in areas. Maybe, let's do something. Okay, I'm gonna take one glove off. That might be a mistake, but I'm gonna do it anyways. We're gonna take this glove off because I'm left-handed. And let's see here. I have a silicone brush. Maybe, should I use a brush to smooth it out? Do I use a brush? Do I use a brush? Or do I use another popsicle stick? Or should I just let it dry? Will they come out with non-toxic resin too? Like UV resin, it's that, excuse me, that question of UV resin, I have to still ask him. I was asked that earlier this week, and I haven't been able to get an opportunity to ask him, but it is definitely something I have been asked. Any other glue, every single glue that he offers is all non-toxic. So if it's possible to do a UV resin, hopefully it is, or hopefully he wants to. So I was asked earlier today if this same epoxy you can put in like silicone molds. So my next project is using like a silicone mold to see if it like fully cures in a mold. Ooh, that looks so much better. So all I did was I just took this like another silicone popsicle sticks, and I'm just kind of, it's barely touching the tumbler, but it's kind of like smoothing it out a little bit. And I can tell from like looking at it from the side, like there is certain areas where it was like, where I'm like, oh, it looks good now. Looks so good. So I guess use another popsicle stick and smooth it out. I mean, I was like barely touching it. Scraping the sides. Okay. I think that's it for today. This has to dry. There's like nothing I can do more outside of stare at it and wait for it to dry quicker. So in the end, I only used 1 ounce. So a half an ounce of each bottle, or 1 ounce total of the epoxy to do the first coat on this tumbler. And like, what are these? They're 4 ounces. So I used 1/4 of it. Is that right? Yeah. I mean, that's still a lot that's in the bottle. So I used 1/4 to do the first layer. Do you think I'm going to need a second layer? I don't know. It looks really good. And because I took that popsicle stick and I like evened out the layer, there's like, I don't see any ripples in it. Huh, looks good. I'm kind of impressed. My first silicone mold, and it looks pretty decent. All right, y'all, I will either be back for sure tomorrow to do the next step on this tumbler, or I'll be back later this afternoon if I like get impatient and want to come back so we can do part 3 of this thing, because I'm ready. I'm not a process crafter. I like when things are like done, and it's driving me crazy that this is not done, but I started it yesterday. All right, y'all, I will see you later.